stops here.
Yeah.
All right, my second question for you all is, how well are individuals able to differentiate between casual writing and academic writing or professional writing?
Well, my question with that is this the typical person or is this the average person? Who are we actually talking about? Are there people that are able to differentiate? Absolutely. We're not saying that it's every single person we come in contact with doesn't know how to do this. That's not what we're saying. But to be aware of it is extremely important. And I think it's a major area of concern with some of the issues we've already addressed with that first question. I know with the communication classes and definitely in all of the other areas, we look at information literacy. You're evaluating pros and cons of research. Is Wikipedia really the best source out there? Or I'm going to use information from a Facebook blog as my post. You guys know, you're laughing, you're nodding your heads. Well, the same thing goes with your language as well. You've got to keep in mind that literacy is important. Everybody needs to understand what those things stand for, and there's a time and a place to use that information. Like Dr. Kuhler said, the vulgarity is definitely an issue. In our research, as far as communicating online, the issue is known as flaming, where you have the freedom to say whatever you want because you're not right in front of that person, so you're just going to let it out there. A lot of nodding on that one. Well, realize you just put your thoughts and your emotions in print and hit send, or send it in on a paper, and that's there. That's evidence for us that, okay, we're being personally attacked in our work for no good reason. It's just, if you have a moment to vent, that's great, but then you save it or delete it, not hit send. Go back and look at what you're writing and make sure it makes sense, and that it's appropriate to send to your boss, to your teacher, whoever it's actually going to. Along with that, the appropriateness comes a casualness. My name is either Dr. Fair or Miss Fair. I'm not Brandy to my students. And we were talking up here before we got started. I got an email the other day, hey Brandy, what I miss in class? The email had no name on it. I had no idea which of my 100-something students it was, and the email address was morecowbell@hotmail.com. Which is funny if you've seen the Saturday Night Live skit, but that doesn't even tell me if it's male or female who this is coming from. So, like Dr. McBee said, you have to reply back, who is this, what class are you in, what information are you looking for, and my name is Dr. or Miss Fair, by the way, not Brandy to you. So you have to know who you're addressing. If they haven't given you that permission yet to have that personal connection and call me by my first name after it's all said and done, always keep those professional barriers up until you know it's safe to call somebody by their first name or by whatever they want to be called. That's absolutely great. A question that we're going to get into later is, if nobody tells you this technology wave happens so fast, a lot of us play catch up into using it in our classrooms and learning the lingo. So if we're not teaching it, how are you going to learn? So it's not just on you to know it and that it's common sense, because the younger generations, have no idea what a typewriter is. My nephews will never know probably what a CD player is because of iPods and things like that are out there. So we've got to remember this is a new generation and not completely slam them because they don't know it, but to teach the right way and the wrong way of how you're using language both orally and written.
So as I think about this question about casual writing, academic writing, and professional writing, and I see that all those as three distinct different things, it just reminds me when I started my career and I was graduating with my undergraduate degree, and I did student teaching, and I'm like, oh no, this is not for me. And so I went flying from that high school and went into business for 10 years before I decided to go back and work on a master's and a PhD degree. And so I have that background in that business world and that profession, and there is a protocol, and there is a way things are done. I had a degree in English. I thought I knew a lot of information. I did not know business language and business information, how to approach things. And so I think this is just a difficult thing all the way across the board for anyone at any level trying to distinguish between the casual, the professional, the academic. But in terms of students and what I see in the classroom, this is especially difficult trying to move into that academic language and what that looks like and what it sounds like. And I see a lot of resistance to that. Maybe because, there's just, the casual is easier to do, it's something that we do on a daily basis. And I tell my students this all the time, the way we talk, the way I talk in class is not how I write. I'm usually grammatically incorrect when I'm in the classroom, and I'm more informal in that sense, and it's okay. But when we get down to that written word and getting it in place, that's a whole different deal. And you are judged, unfortunately, our society is one that judges on how well you handle standard English. So if you're applying for a job and you send out a resume and a cover letter, and that company has gotten 100 of them, the first thing they're looking for is a grammatical error or mistake where they can deep six that. That's just a given. I know, I've seen it, I've been on those committees where that's happened. Maybe very qualified. Does that mean the person is not, competent because there's a grammatical error? Of course it doesn't mean that, but that's how it's judged. And so the pressure of that and trying to prepare people for that and make that shift is really important. A lot of times in my classes I will give a resume assignment. One time I had a student who had put about on the resume one of her great skills was she was the best Kool-Aid maker at the child care center where she worked. I'm like, this is not appropriate to put on a resume. And the blue cloud paper that you use, nobody will take you seriously. You've got to know.
Scratch and sniff.
Yeah, you've got to know who that audience is and make those shifts between when it's okay to be casual, when you're in an academic setting and needing to write in an academic way, and when to do professional writing. These are all three very important areas, and I think it's just incredibly hard. A lot of it comes with experience, but a lot of it comes with what you learn in the classroom.
I think one thing that contributes to this is, and by the way, since we're communicating here, let me clarify when I talked a moment ago or mentioned a moment ago about vulgarity. The root word of the word that from which we get vulgarity means common, or the crowd, or just the common people. And so we're talking here about things that are commonly used by the masses. And I think, vulgarity can have another meaning there. So that's just a point to make sure we understand what we're talking about. The other thing is, that I wanted to bring up, is that one pitfall of technology, and technology is a tool. It is not an end unto itself. It is a tool. So as you would select different tools to do different jobs, so you use different tools of technology to help you get where you want to go. But I think the greatest pitfall is that it allows us to be so fast that we don't have time to stop and think about how we sound to others. Or we don't have time to just stop and think about what does this really mean. We're used to pulling through a fast food place, and by George, if we don't get our food in 5 minutes, we're going to call the manager, We have an instant gratification society, and it's been that way for several years. So we get very impatient, and that bleeds over into what I see students lack today, and that is time to sit and to think about things, to interact with each other, to exchange ideas. And you can't do that when you're doing BTY and BFF and all that sort of thing. It's just your mindset there is to hurry up and get that message across. Sometimes that's appropriate, and that's a great tool to use. But sometimes other things are required of us in our scholarship. And so when you use technology in that manner, where because I was trying to think when y'all were talking a while ago, I don't think I have ever gotten an email from a student, at least I can't remember this recently, that used some of the texting or text-ease, maybe not more than once.
And was that because of your input?
It probably was. I tend to be pretty quick on that. But I think some of this is maturation as a student. Some of it is gaining knowledge through experiences like this. because maybe you've never thought about some of these things before. But I think the bottom line is, if, at least for me, if you will consider technology a tool that in some areas will help you get a message across in an informal way. What time are you going to be home for dinner? That's what happens to us when my husband and I text back and forth. But don't transfer that same impatience, I guess, to what you write and to the preparation of assignments. And learn that all these things have a place and that there is a protocol, and it is very important to learn to observe protocol. I don't allow my students to call me Donna either. The man that directed my dissertation 150 years ago is only 7 or 8 years older than I am. He is still Dr. Campbell to me. I will not bridge. I have such respect for him and his position and his knowledge. I will not bridge that gap out of respect. And he's fine. If his students want to call him Mike, that's okay. But I can't do it. And so I think if you will start thinking about observing protocol in your use of technology and use what is appropriate for what you need, I think that'll be a real important thing for you to learn.
I just want to repeat the question again. It says, how well are individuals able to differentiate between casual writing, academic writing, or professional writing? That's a question, right? I would answer that question with not very well, and I don't think that's due to texting or text lingo. I know about 12 or so years ago, when I was in my journalism 101 class at A&M, the very first day of class, number one, they said, throw everything you learned in English class out the window, which I'm sure you understand. And number two, you are writing for and communicating to an audience with an average intelligence and reading level of a 14-year-old, 8th grade. And so you want to do whatever you can to communicate with the average person as well as you can. And shortcuts, sometimes we think of shortcuts as being an easy way to do things. Sometimes when it comes to me, to me, texting lingo is the harder way of doing things, because again, you're working with that education level, communication level, and I frankly just, unless I know somebody is under the age of 14, I pretty much operate on the notion that everybody I come in contact with has that average level of intelligence, and that, of course, I'm smarter than anyone. I mean, no, just kidding. But, you know, that you have to, just like the three of them have said, you have to feel out whatever relationship it is that you're fostering when you're communicating with someone, and there are a certain amount of formalities that you go through, whether that's with, I mean, I know I'm not going to talk to my grandma, like I talk to my best friend. You know, there's just a certain amount of respect and rapport that you have no matter what your audience is. And so I say that to say, going back to whether people are able to differentiate, no, I think it's pretty hard for most people to do so, and unless you have training in that, or you're very aware of what you're doing or experiencing that, it's going to be hard. And so that said, it's all the more important that you communicate effectively and not try to take shortcuts.
I'm going to respond. I want to say something else about that. I was sitting here thinking as Ms. Patterson was talking. Perhaps the state of affairs that we experience today in our grading and in the quality of a lot of the papers that we get, maybe it's not due to texting. I'm not sure. I think that is a factor, frankly. But there is a drastic difference these days in the quality and the kind of papers we get from students. People have always struggled with using contractions and poor grammar bad punctuation and things like that. But in the last few years, 5 years, I have seen a terrible downward spiral in what students give to me, and it's okay with them, by the way, many of them. I'm not willing to say, I know the next question gets into, should we blame the public schools or not? And I'm not going to touch that one with a 10-foot pole, I can tell you. But I think a lot of these things are societal, and I just think there's more to this perhaps than texting. I think texting, to blame it all on texting would be simplistic and unfair. I think texting contributes to it, certainly, but I don't think that's the cause of it. So about public schools now.
Spoilers.
That's what we do.